do looks matter after 10, 20, 25 years in a marriage?
Do
Like,
looks
do looks
matter?
Like, do you care what I look like? Do I care what you look like after a certain amount of years being married? Is that something that we value? Let's take a look at this psychologist that talks about how women and men look at looks after a certain time.
Your looks is the only depreciating asset you have.
Wow.
So why would you want to derive your value from it and your self-esteem from it? We know it's depreciating.
Because what happens when the looks start to fade in women who've only put their value in their physical appearance? What happens?
Well, what happens is they end up with men who are equally shallow. Here's the thing, if I'm just a pretty face, I'm going to end up with a man who only likes pretty faces. Now the reality is that man is so easily distracted with the next pretty face and the next 25-year-old and the next. So what will happen is you're in a constant competition with people you can't compete with for the rest of your life. And similarly, if I was somebody who just sold sex and I'm going to find a man who's addicted to sex. And men that are addicted to sex will always want novelty. You'll never be enough. So reality is when you create your identity on something so fragile, you attract somebody who's also very fragile, and then you end up in a lonely cycle, unfortunately. Yeah. Whereas when you develop something deep, you attract someone deeper, and your connection tends to be more long-lasting, God willing. It tends to be more long-lasting.
Right. So, what's your take on that? On the looks for women? I'll give my take on it as well.
Okay, so the reason why it's a little bit of like a challenge. I wouldn't say a challenge, but yeah, it's a challenge, right? Like, because there's parts of me that always want to look beautiful, that I'm worried about what my face looks like, my skin and my body, and I want to be healthy and I want to do all these things. So it's like you need that, because I think for me, like, it gets you to this place of like, well, if my body is my temple and I know that I have to take care of it, there needs to be some sense of vanity attached to it. But if you only focus on what you look like on the outside and not worried about what's coming into the inside, then there's this disconnect, a misalignment, right? So for a long time, I know, like, I focused just on the outside adornment of what I look like. So focused on my hair, so focused on my teeth, on my skin. And then I remember when I got sick, after COVID, I had this liver issues. And I got all this like dark spots on my skin. And for me it was like, wow, that was like such a punch in the face, because it's like, well, everything that I knew, everything that what I said about my face and what I look like, or people are going to be looking at me and that's all they're going to see, really gave me this discernment of like, well, Vivian, you're just not your looks. You're more than that. So I think God really humbled me. And it's like, well, I have some dark spots because of my liver and I had issues. And thank God that I got through it. And thank God that I'm healthy, that I know I have to eat certain things or not eat certain things. And I'm okay with that. So again, like that battle of knowing like, how much do I need to pay attention to that? And how little do I need to pay attention to that and put that energy to something else?
You know, it comes down to what you value, right? Do you value looking good or being healthy, right? Do you value connection, or you value just having sex, right? The podcast has got money and sex. I mean, if you only have God and you don't have sex, you have a sexless marriage, eventually something's gonna happen, right? And if you have God and you have sex and you don't have no money, eventually you're not gonna be happy in your marriage. So you need to have all of it. You need to have a deep connection. You need to have the ability to connect with sex, and you also have to have a provider. You have to provide. So from a man's perspective, looks do matter to a certain point. I look back at I think it was Cat Williams who was a comedian. He said in his bit, he said like women they just think too much about their appearance. They realize that we're men when we want to have sex. Like it doesn't matter about your stretch marks. You have stretch marks. You know, you were big and you got skinny, or you got skinny and you got big. Either way, we're doing something tonight. You know, we don't care that your panties are not matching. You gotta take it off anyways, right? Or your toes are not painted. So that to me, like, we could relate, because when there's chemistry, then the looks don't matter. When there is passion, the looks don't matter. Why? Because there's a deep connection. So I think if you're focused only on the looks, and if you're building a marriage based on he's paying the bills, he's taking care of me, I'm looking good, and that's the agreement, eventually a lot of things could happen. He would go broke, and then you're gonna leave him. She could get fat, and then you're gonna leave her, right? So if that's all you have in that relationship, eventually it's gonna fail. But if you have a deep connection, whether it's that she's your ride or die, whether like he is gonna be your king, and whether business goes up and down, you got each other's backs, then it's a whole different conversation. But the standard has to be you're taking care of yourself, not because you want to look good for me, you want to be healthy.
And I want to look good also for me, not just for you.
And that's the attractive part.
Yeah.
The attractive part is if you're not doing it for other people, you're doing it for you.
Right.
And if men are not attracted to, if men are only attracted to looks, and there's nothing in deep enough to hold them connected to that relationship, eventually there's going to be another shiny object, a younger woman, a more beautiful woman that's going to take them out of their path,
Right.
and the marriage is going to fail.